Well, I've got a huge red alert that I want to share with you guys today regarding a coordinated attack by our United States government in various states who are now going after our farmers, and more particularly our small farmers. And they're using a bunch of environmental kind of claims in order to do that. But the bottom line is, we all know that those at the top of the pyramid all believe that there are too many people on this planet and they want to weed a lot of us out. In fact, in the Kissinger report, NSSM 200, Henry Kissinger entertained the idea of using food as a weapon in order to call the population, so to speak. And he also spoke about rationing, which we've unfortunately already seen in the past with some of our prior world wars. But the bottom line is, he who controls the food controls everything. You've got an awful lot of power when that happens. And I see, unfortunately, our United States government seizing up our small farmers. Take a look what I'm talking about here. And I originally found this on the Gateway Pundit, and it's liberal state declares war on small farmers and homesteaders. War on food is spreading in the United States through land use restrictions, geoengineering, and waves of propaganda. Now, the article states small farmers are under attack in the Beaver State, which has begun shutting down family farms throughout the state under the guise of water conservation and groundwater protection. The owner of Yanessa Ranch shared a 20-minute video explaining what is going on in Oregon as bureaucrats erroneously classify small family farms and homesteads as concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, in order to shut them down. Any feeding area that has a concrete, rock, or gravel floor falls into this category, which would include most of your small dairy or egg farms. If you have 2 or 3 milking cows, the rancher explains, you are now targeted by the state for closure. And the rancher further explains this in the video. And here's what he says. The state of Oregon has effectively shut down farmers and market gardens on a large scale, and they are actually sending out cease and desist letters to farmers, and they're using satellite technology to find their victims and send them these letters saying that they can no longer operate. Take a listen.
The state of Oregon has effectively shut down small farms and market gardens on a large scale. And they're actually sending out cease and desist letters to farms, and they're using satellite technology to find their victims and then send them these letters and say, you can't operate. And they're doing it in the name of water conservation, groundwater protection.
Of course. They're doing it in the name of saving the planet and claiming that they're somehow hazardous to planet Earth. Well, the truth of the matter is, we all need food to survive. And we definitely need our small farmers and our large farmers. And they are doing everything in their power to get rid of them in multiple states. See, the truth is, if this is happening in Oregon, it's going to happen, and already is happening in other states, by the way, Washington and California being 2 of those that have been fairly adamant about going after the farming industry. And I'm going to show you much more information on all of that. But I want to stick with Oregon, because here is a case, one of the cases that is happening there in Oregon. And this was put out on nationalreview.com. Oregon's government and dairy industry join forces against small farmers. So here's what it goes on to state. Sarah King, who launched the enterprise on her 11-acre property in 2017, keeps things simple by design. She and her husband never own more than 2 or 3 milk-producing cows. The animals know the routine. Often, they come in from the fields and wait in their barn for their turn at the milking stanchion, where they each spend 15 to 20 minutes. The rest of the time, they are free to wander. Sarah's clients contract with her in herd share system. They purchase an interest in the animal for a portion of its produce. They like the sustainable, ethical, transparent business model and the raw milk that comes with the arrangement. Industrial farmers follow a different kind of model. They aim for efficiency and economies of scale by keeping tens of thousands of cows. These operations keep the livestock penned up for extended periods of time, producing significant waste in concentrated spaces. Now, it goes on to detail this, that Oregon decided in 2023 to impose big dairy regulations on the state's smallest players through the reinterpretation of existing laws. Oregon plans to tag any farm that uses a prepared surface for milking as a confined animal feeding operation, or your CAFO. The label would apply even to farms such as Sarah's, where cows are only confined for 15 minutes per day for milking and are otherwise allowed to roam free. A CAFO designation would have significant implications for Sarah. She would have to install drain lines and holding tanks where cost would exceed $100,000. And that is a very steep price that, quite frankly, none of these small farmers can afford. That's a fact. So you're going to spend $100,000 for a problem that really and truly doesn't exist, because they're only in there for short periods of time, unlike these mega farmers, right? And then you're going to charge them $100,000. Well, if I'm a business owner and I can do the math there, I would have to give up my farm. You can no longer be a small farmer. And this is what's happening to multiple farmers there in Oregon. And I do believe that they are taking the case to court and suing the state. Now, here's the kicker. We are already on the brink of losing hundreds, well over 100,000 farms just within the last 5 years, due to, quite frankly, some of these style regulations and Biden regulations that he's been seizing farmers and people who specifically, meat farmers and all these different types. But let me show you here. And this is on FB.org, and it's over 140,000 farms have been lost in just 5 years. To give you an idea of how big this is a chart showing from 1950. So I'm going back even a little further on this chart, but you can see from the 1950, this red line is the farm operations and number of operators. You can see this has significantly declined, and declined, by the way, while our population is increasing. And you can see the blue one here. This is also gone down massively, and that's farm operators per acre there. So you can see the massive decline. And to give you more of an estimate of how bad it is, between 2017 and 2022, the number of farms in the U.S. declined by 141,733, or 7%, according to the USDA's latest consensus, which comes from 2022, the consensus on agriculture that was just released on February 13th. And by the way, if you really want to dive in to this information, you have to get to restrictedrepublic.com. Justice Knight put out a part 2 to what's going on with Russia, and lots of detailed information. And quite frankly, you're not getting the full story here on these controlled platforms for less than a cup of coffee. I'm talking about $3.99 per month for the first 2 years of the service. You can go to Restricted Republic, see that exclusive content that you're not getting here. And by the way, I publish everything on YouTube on there as well without any of these ads. But use the coupon code RR and the number 4. That's RR and the number 4, and you're going to get that massive discount. But speaking of, right now, FEMA is already predicting a massive food spike cost, including right here in the United States. But they're predicting a 395% increase. And I bring this up because I believe that this whole thing is being done deliberately by state governments, by global governments, by governments right here in the United States, because they want to take over the farming industry and control the food. Take a look here. This is on Motherboard, not my favorite news source. They're very radical left news source. But anyway, FEMA contractor predicts social unrest caused by 395% food price spikes. And let me correct, I said FEMA earlier, I meant a FEMA contractor, to correct that. But here's what it says specifically. The studies published by CNA Corporation in December of 2015, unreported until now, describe a detailed simulation of a protracted global food crisis from 2020 to 2023. And we are right now, right in the middle of that. And you can see an explosive attack on the farming industry. It's downright chilling to the very core that any contractor would be saying that. In fact, they're also doing simulations for food problems right now in Europe. They just had a few. And if you're on Restricted Republic, you've got that information well in advance. But you know what else they're going after? Homesteaders. Here's an article by one of the most leftist, rag, junk media outlets, Media Matters, saying homesteaders are bad and they're right-wing conspiracy theory. It's the sickest thing I've ever seen. But this is what this is what you get from stupid news sites like Media Matters, who doesn't tell the truth. Here we have, this is on Media Matters, and again, I would not recommend going to their site. They don't need a single clip, but I am showing this to you so you know what's going on. But here's how they're labeling homesteaders, right? Viral right-wing homesteading influencers are demonizing migrants and pushing nativist conspiracy theories. Homesteading content and groups are popping up all across right-wing social media platforms. Now, the article goes on to state this: several viral right-wing homesteading and farming influencers are pushing anti-immigrant conspiracy theories and demonizing migrants to hundreds of thousands of followers across their social media. It goes on. The homesteader lifestyle, which these influencers proudly promote and base their content on, is not exclusively a right-wing phenomenon. Crunchy culture, which is the foundation of the homesteading movement, is deeply rooted, they said, in anti-government sentiment and anti-modernism, which strives for independence from the mainstream. The movement broadly disavows cultural relevance and focuses on life and survival without government interference, often choosing to settle in rural areas with plenty of room to grow food, graze animals, and raise children, as if doing that is somehow bad. Do you see how they word this? Oh, how dare you go and buy your own food and become self-reliant? Now, they go on to say that subscribers to this movement promote self-sufficiency, and some advocate for traditional gender norms, as well as aligning themselves with the adjacent trade wife sect that has been gaining popularity within right-wing circles, romanticizing anti-Semitism. A fraction of these influencers also produce content around doomsday preparation. How dare you be a prepper? And supposed upcoming collapse of society. Back in the day, especially during the vid, this became fairly popular. Why? Because people were ready. And then they go on to really get extreme and say, oh, this is akin to stuff at the KKK. I mean, this article will make you sick to the stomach if you read it, because these people are insane. So now, if you're a homesteader and you produce your own food, have your own garden, store food, oh, that is a bad thing. Trust me. They're already coming after those types as well. You're next on the list, because how dare you have enough food for your family and not have to rely on the big old bad government to feed you, which, hint, they're not. If anything, as the SSM 200 Kissinger report says, they'll ration it out. And you are going to be at the bottom of the barrel because you're not one of their prominent, useless eaters like the leftist rag sources like Media Matters. Anyhow, I wanted to bring that to you. I think it's a very important topic that often gets ignored. Anyhow, thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.